There are many removal courses and products available, but the fundamentals, how to get the best results, are rarely taught, nor is offering clients with existing pigment different options other than adding more pigment for colour correction and top-ups. Removal isn't just for bad work. Let's level the playing field here. There's information in this correction and removal specialist course that I want you to know. Many non-laser removal solutions are harsh on the client and their skin, actually causing wetness, inflammation, and irritation to remove the tattoo. Of course, this leads to vastly different healing responses and a client's commitment to their aftercare. Botched Ink techs know that our exclusive removal solution is not only effective removing old pigment, but it's a gentle treatment, enabling us to look at removal differently, offering clients new options for maintaining their brows over the years. The before and after photo you're looking at is from one of our Botched Ink techs. The top photo shows her client's beautiful brows. She'd created and been maintaining them for 4+ years. The pigments were from one of the popular, organic and long-lasting small molecule, we'll talk about all this, ranges. She felt the brows were getting too dark, dull, grey and saturated to continue. And one Botched Ink treatment later, and that's the healed photo. Much of the old carbon black has been removed. The brows look more translucent, and she was able to continue with a subtle colour correction and top up rather than keep adding to the pigment density. As you learn about pigment types, how pigments degrade over the years, pigment build up after top-ups and corrections, I hope you'll come to the conclusion that Botched Ink is a good tool to have in your treatment options, not just for bad or saturated work, but to prevent it. Also great for clients who want a colour boost or refresh, but their brows haven't faded enough, especially hair strokes and more delicate work. It's worth discussing brow maintenance with all your clients. So let's get into learning about pigments. Clients actively seeking removal are quite different in their thinking to new or existing clients booking in for a colour correction who need removal. Follow your instincts, documenting any concerns on the client form. Another reason for the distinction between rescue and revive removal treatments. So if a client's coming to you and you know that they need to have a session or two of removal, and they, for whatever reason, say that that's not what that they want to do, pop it on the form. And any other advice that you give them, especially if it's a client who you decide to go ahead and do a treatment with, whatever it be. Our industry has evolved, leading to varying training standards and, unfortunately, more eyebrow mishaps. Pigment longevity has also changed, posing new challenges for maintenance and corrections. Let's draw a line under the past and look at removal treatments differently. We believe that training in pigment removal and maintenance is as important as training to give treatments in the first place. One shouldn't happen without the other. If you're a busy tech working in a studio with other permanent makeup techs, why not have one or two members of the team become the go-to removal specialists for clients? This tech would become super skilled in removal, and the others will be able to work on more clients with less existing pigment. Rescue and revive. So, do you need to decide which you need? No, not really. It's just rescue and revive. Can be perceived as nicer words and concepts than removal. Removal isn't just for bad work. You've heard me say this several times on this course. Our industry absolutely needs a new best practice to maintain the long-term beauty of microblading and permanent makeup. Rescue and revive is a marketing term. You can rescue brows and you can revive them. It's the same Botched Ink product, same method even, with different thinking. This course is all about helping more techs understand and share this knowledge with their clients and followers. Don't we all want to work on clients with nice brows and less pigment in them? In them, don't we? Setting a new industry standard. And our minimum standard is for all permanent makeup and microblading clients to be advised that removal will be incorporated into their long-term treatment plan, allowing techs to continue delivering their best work year upon year, with Botched Ink being ideally placed to be the removal treatment because it's gentle and it's wonderful. Today, we must draw a line under all the clients who've not previously had this information about removal treatments, understanding that for them, the difficult conversations about them needing removal will continue. Botched Ink Rescue. Don't put up with a cover-up. Out with the old, in with the new. Permanent makeup and microblading always looks pretty and fresh when there's less pigment underneath. Clients who already have saturated brows will need more removal treatments. Let's prevent this. More than 3 removals and it's Botched Ink Rescue. Remind your client that they don't want their brows to look like old brow tattoos. More pigment in the skin and more removal treatments will be needed. An experienced tech knows how and when to add more pigment to give good lasting results, but just as often they know that if they do, they just make the colours look dull, murky and more saturated. Botched Ink Revive. The beauty and skills offered by technicians who tirelessly practice and further their education allows a quality of work not previously seen in permanent makeup. Botched Ink is particularly suitable for lightening, hair strokes, ombre brows and other delicate work. You wouldn't put fresh makeup on top of yesterday's, would you? He's gorgeous, isn't he, by the way? The organic, longer lasting and small molecule pigments we use today for microblading and permanent makeup implant in the skin much more easily, allowing less pigment to be used more superficially in the skin. Gone are the days of solid tattooed brows. And again, to maintain these beautiful brows over the years, well, here's where Botched Ink Revive steps in, using our removal serum to freshen up any existing pigment, removing just enough for the new pigment to look beautiful again. Also being used to fade carbon that's otherwise going to hang around for years or forever. Do you remember back at the start of this course, I spoke about how most non-laser removal solutions are harsh on the skin, and it wasn't really until Botched Ink came along that removal could be used like this. We're the first removal brand to recommend using our serum to maintain beautiful brows. To work on existing pigment, it's best if the old colour has faded 20 to 30% of what it was originally, and then any new pigment will look fresh and as intended. Any more than this and it's just a cover up and brows become more solid. Harsh removal solutions give clients a longer healing time, so less appropriate to use when needing to work deeply. Botched Ink was developed especially for cosmetic tattoos with gentle removal treatments, leaving the skin with less pigment and in an improved condition. Clients like coming back for a Botched Ink treatment if they need it, because the healing wasn't that difficult and they're getting the results. What's different about Botched Ink? It's about one of our most asked questions, and I'm sure there's more people wondering than there are asking, so let me explain. As usual, I'll be sticking to facts and logic, and this video will focus on Botched Ink Serum and why my unique approach to removal has made Botched Ink a very different kind of removal solution. No hype, no marketing, just ingredients, each specifically chosen to do a job. When I started developing Botched Ink in 2018, I knew there were a few key things I wanted to improve for my own saline tattoo removal solution and non-laser removal solutions in general. Improve things for both clients and technicians. I wanted to make a client-friendly lightening and removal solution that clients would willingly return to for another treatment. And most importantly, that their skin would remain in good or an improved condition and their brows could be tattooed again if they wanted. So here's the truth. There are some types of removal solutions available that will get rid of quite a chunk of skin and tattoo pigment in 1 or 2 sessions. You'll see some shockingly good photos showing deeply implanted and saturated brows with and then without much of the pigment. But the treatment details rarely say how long it's been between the first session and the client coming back for a second session or results photos. 3 months, 6 months, longer, and how many clients never did go back? Because at some point we must realise you can't be that destructive to the skin without causing some kind of a problem. A healing problem, with the area around the chunk of skin and pigment that's been removed taking several months to return to a normal colour and texture after each treatment, if the client follows aftercare advice and the scab doesn't come off by accident before it should. The risk of scar tissue developing is higher when the healing period is longer. The risk of the skin remaining sensitive for many months is higher, especially if the client wants to resume wearing makeup or use their normal skincare regime. None of this is great if their clients want their brows tattooed again. I call these skin destructive removal products advanced. Not because the ingredients are advanced, they may just be glycolic acid or alkaline powders. But the considerations of healing and aftercare are advanced, and the client should be made fully aware of their additional post-treatment commitment. It's hard enough getting a client to say yes to removal, but it's part of our mission at Botched Ink to help both techs and clients appreciate when it's time. My whole goal with Botched Ink was to be effective, consistent, gentle, and leave the skin in the best possible condition as soon as possible after each treatment. During the tattoo removal process, and to a wildly varying degree, all laser and non-laser removal treatments must damage or kill skin that has hold of the tattoo pigment. One of the things I learned when doing dry tattooing, my scar and stretch mark treatment, was how to prevent scarring. Not only do I know how to get a tattoo out, but I also know how to prevent scar tissue forming and indeed improving it. This is the beginning of the Botched Ink difference. There are 2 things skin doesn't like: inflammation and irritation. After a removal treatment, they'll make the treated skin take longer to recover from its natural wound and healing response to dry out and form a scab. As a result, the scab will be thicker, more unsightly and uncomfortable for the client. Also at more risk of splitting or accidentally coming off too soon, revealing an open wound. And if inflammation and irritation hang around for too long, scar tissue forms. So with Botched Ink, I wanted to completely minimise causing inflammation and irritation. We needed to make the skin dry out much quicker. I also needed a few more advanced ingredients to help make the method easier. Needing minimal passes of the needle to open the skin. Relying on the soaking in the serum instead of multiple painful passes to force the removal solution into the skin. And when the body's wound healing response starts, nothing much is getting in. For some clients, this happens in just a few minutes. And I'm talking about swelling and serous fluid, the clear wound healing serum the body produces. This means a less than effective treatment was carried out. That's 3 things I needed Botched Ink to do. Soak in the skin super easily, cause minimal, if any, inflammation or irritation, and dry out the skin super quickly. Oh, and get consistently good removal results, of course, so that's 4. Botched Ink really does do the work for you. You just need to make one dense pass of needle holes into the pigment layers and then soak the skin with Botched Ink. The ingredients in Botched Ink were chosen to absorb into the skin really easily, with technicians doing a minimum amount of work on the skin to get enough Botched Ink in, with hand tool or machine method. With Botched Ink, we use just one dense pass to make enough needle holes so that Botched Ink can soak in quickly before the body's wound response of swelling and wetness starts. We start doing a Botched Ink soak as soon as the needle holes are made, working 1 centimetre at a time. Our first star ingredient is aloe vera. Aloe vera is a wonderful ingredient and it's often used to soothe the skin after waxing or laser hair removal. But aloe vera has another use due to its enhanced skin penetration ability. Aloe vera is an excellent carrier for other ingredients, taking them deeply into the skin as well. Even more so when you're making needle holes and using a product with aloe vera as a soak. Most products with aloe vera use normal strength leaf juice or gel. But in Botched Ink, we use a super high strength concentrated aloe vera juice powder, 200 times concentrated. This means Botched Ink is way more powerful taking other ingredients into the skin, and this allows us to do just 1 pass of the needle. Botched Ink to do the work does do the majority of the work for you, as long as you've made enough needle holes, and as a result you've soaked enough Botched Ink into the skin, allowing it to quickly dry out. By using concentrated aloe vera, the serum is soaking and being taken deeper into the skin than our needle holes. This makes Botched Ink brilliant for eyebrows, lip liner, freckles, and small areas of scalp tattooing, but it does make it bad for eyeliner. Botched ink is likely to make any carbon black pigment spread, as it's absorbed into the skin so easily. Plus, as you hear more about the botched ink difference, you'll understand there's other reasons why we don't approve texts to use botched ink near the eye. I keep saying that botched ink dries out skin super quickly. Can you imagine one drop of that into the eye? A corneal burn, I'm thinking at the very least, if botched ink got into the eye. And then there's the bleeding during treatment, lots of capillaries around the eye area. During one dense pass of needling, botched ink makes skin bleed super easily, particularly if the skin doesn't have much scarring. And if there is scarring, which could have been caused by multiple microblading or permanent makeup sessions over the years, or a particularly heavy-handed technician, by the next session, the skin will have improved and more bleeding happens. This ease of skin bleeding during a gentle one-pass removal treatment is unique to botched ink. Deep bleeding too, into and under the tattoo. Remember, we are using the 200 times concentrated aloe vera. Botched ink soaks in deeper than your needle hole. But don't worry, clients won't actually know it's happening. But why do we want this bleeding? The bleeding is actually flushing up even more pigment, deep pigment that you might not otherwise have reached with other removal solutions or osmosis alone. And who even knows what osmosis is? Osmosis is, oh yeah, the definitions of this can get really complicated with pictures of arrows and cells and talking about the movement of liquid through semi-permeable cells. But think of a plant. When a plant has enough water, the stems, leaves, and flowers are supported and the plant grows. Isotonic. But when the plant doesn't have enough water, it soon droops and the plant dries up and dies. Hypertonic. Catch the plant at the right time with more water and the plant will rehydrate. Isotonic again. That's all osmosis. Sorry, I was just laughing at myself. For tattoo removal, we need hypertonic saline to dry out the skin cells surrounding the tattoo pigment powder so the powder can move up and out of the skin. And with botched ink, adding in easy bleeding to this, pushing up even more pigment, you're not just removing pigment from the layers you put the needle and serum into. Botched ink is working deeper, and as it soaks so deeply into the skin. When you use salt and saline or other types of saline tattoo removal solutions, you have to wonder how deeply they soak into the skin, especially if you've had to do multiple passes and the skin's wound healing response is starting. Unlike acids that penetrate deeper the longer you leave them on, which has its own concerns and potential problems, with other types of saline, if you work lightly, you're only going to be removing superficial pigment. This may be fine if that's all that's needed, but if you need to get into the deeper layers, you'd need to work deeply into those layers. And remember, only botched ink is a one-pass method. If the pigment is deep and you don't work deeply, then you aren't going to get the best results. This is why you see some clients getting stuck with results after a number of removal sessions, as the tech has cleared the pigment from the superficial layers of skin, but the deep pigment is still down there and visible. Trouble is, when you then move to using botched ink, we'd be bringing all that deep pigment up and looking darker again, when it really should have been removed in the previous sessions. So poor client. The bleeding after one dense pass and lots of botched ink soak in is also why doing botched ink before any laser removals is the best way to go on saturated or potentially scarred brows. But will you be doing the laser treatments, or do you know a laser tech who's specialised in cosmetic tattoo removal? If not, you must continue with botched ink and understand that most laser techs are not trained to carry out cosmetic tattoo removal and don't understand or have lasers that work on all colours in brown pigment: black, white, red, yellow and green. This is why we're seeing a growing number of clients left with neon yellow brows after laser, or red and the tech didn't know how to continue. Saline tattoo removal treatments are notoriously painful. So a surprising little fact for you is that botched ink is no different, but also uniquely is, as botched ink treatments are not considered painful. So why? You can use the best numbing cream in the world, but with any removal treatment that causes bleeding or needs multiple passes to get the product in, we can't use an epinephrine numbing cream because we want the bleeding and we want the skin to remain open, not blanched, tight, closed and waxy. The minute you start a botched ink treatment, the minute that bleeding starts, the numbing cream begins to wear off. Coming back to our fundamentals again, with botched ink you only need to use one pass. And with other types of removal solutions, you need to do 2, 3 or 4 passes. Can you imagine or remember how it feels to be working the whole of someone's brow, trying to implant a solution that's hurting and stinging, and then doing it again and again and possibly again? Their eyes are going to be watering. You can't, you're trying to help. The things can get messy, especially if you're just using basic salt and a pod of saline. Seriously, how is that even considered a professional treatment anymore? Can you honestly say that that client is going to come back for another treatment? Would you? And would you even like to be offering a treatment like that? To make treatments more comfortable for the client, you already know we do one pass with botched ink because of the 200 times concentrated aloe vera. Another thing we did is to tinker with the pH. When you're doing a botched ink treatment, your client shouldn't feel anything until you've done your one dense pass of the needle, and then are nearing the end of the soak. And your client may then turn around and say, "Ooh, it's stinging a bit now." And that's actually really good to hear, because now you know that botched ink has soaked in deeply enough on its own. Botched ink's pH is around 5.5, the same as normal healthy skin. So the dermis has a pH of about 7, and it's when a product hits the dermis that's a different pH that your client will experience a slight sting. A little fanning with your hand is enough to ease the sensation, as it's not a prolonged burning sting. Botched ink is a no tears formula. If you're familiar with skin peels, you know that some have a low pH of 2, 3, or 4. Lemon juice and vinegar have a similar pH. Would you believe that some tattoo removal solutions have a similar pH? No wonder they hurt. If it was a glycolic acid skin peel, it would be neutralised. Glycolic acid for removal needs to be neutralised. Can you imagine having your needle doing multiple passes and stinging, and only after that starting to soak in the product? And how much is even going to get into the skin once the wound response starts, swelling and the lymph serous fluid? You can check any product's pH with a litmus paper testing kit. They cost a few pounds or dollars. They're easy to buy online. It's just a pack of strips of paper. Alkaline removal solutions have a high pH up to 14, and you can see some alkaline removal solutions are white powders because it's made up of alkaline powders, but they can also be mixed in with a liquid. Well, they are also mixed in with a liquid, and that liquid can be water, it can also be glycolic, and it can also be saline. Now we need to stop the bleeding, dry out the skin, and make healing as comfortable as possible for the client. To explain something really fundamental again, who knows how to make the best crispy pork crackling? To make really good crispy pork crackling, you need to get a joint of pork with the skin and fat still attached. Slice or score the skin deeply and add lots of salt, rubbing it into the slice marks, and then leave it for about half an hour. During this time, excess water from the skin and fat comes to the surface, and this is osmosis in action, as the natural salts in the skin and fat try to level the salt on the surface. Remember the arrows that I wasn't talking about? All the wetness has come to the surface of the pork skin. So when you're ready to pop it into the oven, you add more salt. After blotting off the wet salt, you add more salt, add some oil and seasoning, and then pop it into the oven for the required amount of time. And when it comes out, you can have really crunchy pork crackling. It's important to note that no one wants soggy pork crackling, where the surface is crunchy but it's still soggy fat at the bottom. Let's be logical about this and bring it back to saline tattoo removal. When you open the skin with needle holes and put a load of salt in, the skin is going to get wetter due to osmosis as it tries to balance the incoming levels of salt. You can literally watch all the wetness coming out of the skin and see it running down the sides of the client's face if you're not careful. I needed to fix this. And what's going to happen if the skin takes too long to dry? Skin goes funny enough when we've been in the bath for too long, and it can take a few days for a typical saline solution or salt and saline to dry out the skin, especially if the weather is hot and humid, risking a soggy bottom and a certain amount of inflammation and irritation. This is why saline tattoo removal typically requires an amount of client aftercare, having them blotting and washing the area to ease any continued wetness and preventing healing fluids drying to a thick scab on the surface while the bottom is still soggy. With a soggy bottom, you also have to wonder how much of the pigment that had been released during the removal treatment has now been let go. Let go because the skin was soggy, and some pigments stay, you're trying to remove a tattoo. Some pigment's going to dry into the scab and heal away, but some pigment in an unknown depth, especially if you're working deeper, yeah, picture it. Before having botched ink, I've known or seen photos of clients or my students' clients whose scabs literally slipped off due to a soggy bottom. There's more risk of that happening when you're doing body tattoo removal, and because of all the experience I've had with removal treatments, this is why I do not approve botched ink technicians to work on the body. There are too many risks, and I don't want botched ink's reputation being remembered for that. You can now understand how skin wetness from salt can be a problem. I realised that I needed to put something into the botched ink formula that would absolutely dry out the skin really quickly. So quickly that the wetness from salt barely gets a chance to start. Skin treated with botched ink is already starting to dry out before the client leaves. They leave with dry brows, and they'll be fully dried out and crispy crackling by the end of the night and still dry the next morning. To do this, I included another star ingredient in botched ink, aluminum sulfate. No other removal product has this ingredient, and I am really pleased because I thought of it. Aluminium sulfate is a styptic ingredient, one that stops bleeding and other wound liquids. If you have pets, cats or dogs, and they damage their dew claw and it's really bleeding, you stick their paw into the styptic powder and it closes the damaged blood vessels. It's a vasoconstrictor. A styptic is kind of like our secondary numbing cream, but without the numbing cream. Botched ink is a vasoconstrictor, and it can be so effective that on some clients you can actually see a halo of white skin around their treated brow. Another styptic ingredient in botched ink is cornstarch, and I thought of this one too. Cornstarch is also really good at mopping up oil. You can often find it in face powders. Something else that prevents skin drying out so too quickly, oils. There are two things that don't happen when you very quickly dehydrate the skin. No inflammation and no irritation. We've forced the skin into apoptosis, where skin cells die without inflammation, just like your skin sheds every day. Clients have a thin, dried out skin scab after a botched ink treatment, no matter how deeply we've worked. And it's not a wound healing scab, a typical wound healing scab, which would have been thicker as a result of the skin wetness, inflammation, and irritation. The thin, botched ink, dried out skin scab also contains any pigment that flushed up into the skin that was dried out. Remembering logic from a previous point, if you have skin that's taken a few days to dry out and form a scab, how much of the pigment in the lower layers has been released back into the soggy skin? The reason we get such good, consistent results with botched ink is that we flushed up the pigment and dried it out. I can't really explain it any more basically than that. Our client aftercare is simple too. We don't need botched ink clients to keep washing any wetness off of their face, because there is none. And once the skin has dried out, we have, sorry for this one, crispy human crackling. Salt is a preservative. Salt is antibacterial, and salt is antiseptic. We do not need or want our clients to be washing their brows for the first 48 hours. We want to maintain the crispy crackling. And at this stage, it's barely noticeable. In fact, it's probably looking quite nice as a brown, thin area. Brown brows for a few days. Your client might actually be really pleased about that. And uniquely to botched ink, after 48 hours, we can now get our clients to use our prescribed aftercare on their brows because their skin is completely dried out. Clients would like the healing skin to feel nice over the next few days, as a dried out skin scab can look a little like psoriasis as it gets right into the healing phase. Botched ink is uniquely different to any other non-laser tattoo removal solution, not just Saline, but any other type that I've ever come across. I've had conversations with many experienced techs in our industry and those who represent other brands or methods. They hadn't considered that botched ink dries out the skin to remove the tattoo. Botched ink comes in a pack of 10 2ml single-use sachets. But why don't we use bottles instead? Because aloe vera is a fresh ingredient and it's one that degrades over time. You'll see the colour of the liquid changing as it does. Aloe vera is the ingredient that helps other ingredients penetrate into the skin. So when you've had the bottle open for a few days, the ingredients begin to lose their effectiveness. Is the bottle and solution good for 3, 6 or 12 months after opening? What does it say on the label? Do you need to put it in the refrigerator? Sachets are one-time use. An open bottle may be left in the drawer for weeks between treatments. Botched ink comes in individual sachets to maintain maximum potency and freshness, and it's exactly why techs can rely on botched ink to consistently give good results. Botched ink has a 2-year expiry from manufacturer, and each sachet has the expiry date printed on it. Botched ink is sold to our officially trained technicians only. We do not supply techs we've not trained. There's information that I share during training I want botched ink techs to understand, namely how to get the safest and best removal results, because you understand the tattoo and skin you're working with. In the UK, Botched Ink Serum costs £30 for 10 2ml single-use sachets. 10 sachets is 10 removal treatments. In the US, Botched Ink is $40 for 10 sachets, and we are the only removal brand putting our product into sachets, and our packs of Botched Ink also include 10 client aftercare sheets. It probably costs me the same to put 2ml of Botched Ink into one sachet, the same as it costs another manufacturer for one 30ml bottle. I could charge a lot more for Botched Ink. I'm sure our ingredients cost more for a start. Don't mistake Botched Ink's low price for low quality. The plan always was to make us the choice for discerning technicians with an industry-leading training course, not just a how-to guide, and offering the ongoing support you'd expect from a brand.